Hello everybody and welcome to Lawrie's Mechanical Marvels. As you might be able to tell from the Fat Rotary Railway, it's time for Lawrie Goes Loco. As you may have seen in a previous episode, my engine went out on holiday. And so while we're here at the Leiston Works Railway, I thought it's a good opportunity to have a go and review it. So let's go have a look at my Ruston 48. This is my Ruston 48, number 294266 of 1951. And it is so called a Ruston 48 because in Ruston's rather clever way of numbering and naming things, it has precisely 48 horsepower. Or at least it did have 48 horsepower when it left the factory. Nowadays, possibly a bit less. Now, this one actually hasn't had that much of a hard life. It was supplied new in 1951 and went to the Burnside Tramway in Cumbria, where it worked at the James Cropper paper mill. And there were 4 plants along a 4-mile tramway, and its job was to move the wagons in and take the goods out to the main line. And it replaced a smaller simplex locomotive, which has also been preserved, called Rachel. And she worked the tramway for around 15 years, and when it eventually was closed down, she was bought and saved and went into preservation, and eventually found herself at Steamtown at Carnforth, which back in the 70s, the late 70s and the 80s, it was the hub of mainline steam in the UK. So she was rubbing buffers with things like Pendennis Castle, Sir Nigel Gresley, and of course, the infamous Flying Scotsman. And for a time, they used this as their work shunter, because it's quite good at moving things around. It is, however, less good at stopping things. It will quite happily shift 100 tonnes on the level, but it won't stop it very quickly. So this was sidelined and forgotten about. When Sir William McAlpine left Steamtown and sold his share in it, which then went on to become West Coast Railways, the engine went back home with Sir William to his private railway at Fawley Hill. And it received a lot of work. It had a brand new cab put on it. It also had a full engine rebuild, costing in the region of £2,000 back in 1990s money. I have one photo of the locomotive charging up Fawley Hill's infamous 1 in 13 gradient, the steepest Hessian railway in Europe, and the second steepest in the world. And that is all I can find. I believe that Lady McAlpine used to use this as part of her Christmas nativity play, or nativity display. And that's about all it got used for. And that basically is its history. And then I came along wanting to buy a Ruston 48 and got in contact with Sir William, and we struck a deal, and I ended up buying it and taking it home to its new home, the Mid-Suffolk Light Railway. And that is basically its history. So its working life was basically only 15 or so years. And then it's been in preservation ever since. She really is an absolutely tiny locomotive. In fact, she's one of the smallest mass-produced standard gauge locomotives ever built in this country, weighing in at only 7.5 tonnes, which means the kind of limited 48 horsepower isn't such a big issue when it's only 7.5 tonnes. This makes it exceptionally portable. And it's what these things were built for. They were used as contractors' locomotives. They could be picked up and moved and placed on lightly laid, poor quality track and trundled up and down quite happily. They're also very much at home at factories. In fact, just like the Leiston Works Railway, trundling up and down between 2 factories and taking things to the mainline sidings, exactly where you'd expect to find one of these engines. My one, it's still a bit of a work in process. I have the front sanders still to reattach, and there's various bolts missing here. The rear buffers show signs from having a heavy shunt at some point in its early life. But basically, I'm pretty happy with it. We've painted it all up, and I think she looks stunning. When I think of a small diesel shunter, this is exactly what comes into my head. It looks very stereotypically like a small locomotive, like a small diesel shunter. It's almost the first thing, you think of a small diesel shunter, this is it. You ask a kid to draw a small diesel shunter, this is the kind of thing they'll draw. I personally think it's absolutely beautiful. I'm very proud of it. It is, of course, a mechanically driven locomotive, and the drive comes down off a main sprocket, down these chains onto the cog on each axle. So both axles are driven by these chains, and that's where we get our forward momentum from. and there's a little oiler that keeps chucking oil on the chains to keep those from, keep them well lubricated. So it does dribble oil as we're going along. Prepping this thing is actually really easy and quite quick. All we do is open up the side doors here and here. Bang. Hidden behind here we have a battery isolator, and then all we have to do is get the dipstick down here, check to make sure there is indeed oil on the dipstick, which there is, replace that, give the inside a quick visual inspection, make sure nothing's fallen off it, check the tightness of the belts. Right, and that's that. We can shut these back up. So once we get up here, the first thing to do is to check the gearbox oil. That indeed is oily, so we replace that. Here we have the fuel dipstick. And we got a nice thing telling it I've got a gallon, half a tank or full. It's not a big tank. It uses roughly a gallon per hour, and it is a pain in the backside to bleed up, so we really don't want to run out of fuel. Dipstick, fuel tank. We've got over half a tank left. So that's just over 4 gallons, probably 5 gallons. So that's about enough for, say, 5 hours running. And the next thing to do is just to check the water. Whoops. The next thing to do is to check the water in the radiator. I can still see water, therefore it's fine. God, I'm graceful up here. That's basically it. So she's ready to be started. So to start up, we throw the master switch, and we'll push the starter, and then we'll pull out this, and this is the decompressor. It's not a big starter motor, and so by pulling the decompressor out, we take some of the resistance out, so it's easier for the starter motor to spin the engine up. And then as soon as you throw the decompressor in, or pull it out, that then fires up. So it should protect the starter motor for a bit more. Over here, we have the throttle, which is a very small and simple unit. The throttle we basically just set. Once the engine's in motion, that's fine. Throttle, give it on. If it's a big train, you'll give it more revs. If it's a lesser train, less revs. All it's important that we just keep the oil pressure up. In front of me, we have the gears. So it's got 3 speeds, and they're an epicycle gearbox, which means there's 3 constantly meshing gears and an individual clutch on each. And by pushing this lever over and in, we have a lovely amount of control, slowly slipping and bringing the power down nice and gently. It's really, really lovely. In 3rd gear, we have a top speed of 9 miles an hour, which I can assure you in this is absolutely terrifying. Nothing feels quite that fast, but it's quite good. The handbrake is here, and it's just ratchet. You push it that way to apply and put it that way to take it off. In all fairness, it does the job well, and you've got a lot of control with it. You can feel the weight of the engine, feel the control. And lastly, over here, we have the reverser for forward and backwards. Sometimes with that, if the gears haven't aligned just quite right, you have to put it into neutral and just pull the gears across slightly, just to move the cogs enough to be able to get the reversing gear over. But once it's in, it's pretty good. The only other controls down here are we have 2 foot pedals down here which are joined, and they're for the sanders, which at the moment aren't actually connected up. At some point I'll reconnect the sanders, but for the time being they're not. And then finally we have a lever down here, and that joins the 2 gearboxes together, and there's a channel between the 2. If you turn it on, it allows oil to flow from one to the other, and by turning it off you stop the flow. When we're running, if you continue the flow towards each other, there's a little lifter which oils the chains, and it will eventually just chuck all the oil out. So we turn it off when it's running, and then when the locomotive stopped, we turn it back on so they can equalise. And that genuinely is it. The only other controls we have are interior light, front light, rear light, and of course a horn. We've got the battery indicator down there and an oil pressure gauge. There's no water pressure gauge or anything else. That's everything on my Loco. It's a remarkably simple and lovely little thing, and I love it very much. The last control is this, is the engine stop. By bringing it over here, we'll turn the engine off. So in order to start it, we need to put that over there. Make sure we have a couple of revs on the throttle, And then we press the start button, and this is loud. Pull the decompressor out, and she roars into life. So now the only thing left to do is go take her for a run. So what is my dear little Ruston 48 like to drive? It's very, very loud. Out of everything I have ever driven, this, without doubt, is the loudest locomotive, by quite some way. With the gears fully engaged, it's almost impossible to hear anything on here. Also, the brakes have now taken a habit of squealing. The reverser occasionally jams. You have to open the gear up a little bit in neutral to then slam it into the other gear, just to get that mesh right. Actual control though, it's delightful. Putting it into gear feels amazing. You have such amazing control with the gear. Just creep up to wagons. And although there's nothing to shunt here, back at Mid-Suffolk, this thing is fantastic for shunting. So very easy to treat. And to be fair, visibility is very good. You can see out the windows, you can see the buffers. It's so easy to use. It's a wonderful little work shunter. Driving, we don't really have to do anything on the throttle. We just set the throttle depending on the load. If it's a big train, we'll give it more throttle. If it's a slightly smaller train, don't need as much. We've basically just got it cracked here, just giving enough just to keep the oil pressure up. The brakes also are fantastic. For a little Loco, ratcheting on the brake and it just stops. It's not bad when we've done stuff in Mid-Suffolk and we've had it on a train. The brakes are really effective well. They will stop the whole locomotive and its train. Slide across into reverse. Release the handbrake and slowly find it into first gear. It's not the smoothest machine and it's not the quietest by a long way. But in my opinion, it may well be the best. The ride is certainly not brilliant, especially on the newly laid track here. You can feel it bumping around quite a lot, and the suspension is limited. It's also really missing any seats or anything for crew comforts. With a top speed of 9 miles an hour, that would be far too fast for this railway. It is sat in first gear at the moment.
which isn't actually that fast. But up here, being a short wheelbase locomotive, it sure feels fast. It's a weird sensation because it is so much shorter than any other locomotive I've driven. It just feels so strange. The noise though is just excessive. I know it's my locomotive, but I absolutely adore driving it. Having it and being my own just makes it that much more entertaining and just that much more enjoyable. There's such a sense of wonder and excitement every time I take this out for a little run. And to be fair, I've absolutely loved seeing it go up and down when the other drivers have had to go on it. It's been a fantastic experience. Because in all fairness, on another railway, apart from the big stuff I can hear, it's a basically useless engine. But to actually have a use and a purpose, it's been absolutely fantastic. I love driving it. I really love driving it. It's such a good little locomotive. My days, the noise of this thing is just, well, it's loud. Even powering down, it's loud. Now, I don't know if it's my one or if it's just a nature of the class that are all this loud, but God, it is. We normally have ear defenders for working on it. If they're travelling up and down here, we're not really engaging the gears long enough to really justify it, but it's a loud locomotive. Is it still the best thing ever? Oh yeah, it's definitely the best thing ever. It's it's great. It's very hard to like review your own locomotive and see the faults with it. Well, what the faults? It's underpowered. The brakes will stop it, but not too much more. There's no seats. There's no heating. The windows don't shut properly. But it's still just fantastic. It's, for a one-man owned locomotive, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I can't think of something. I can't think of a locomotive really I'd like to own more. It's fantastic. It's great. It really is. I love it. It's just, it really is so easy to drive and so controllable. It's perfect. Perfect loco. I have loved driving my locomotive up and down at the Leiston Works Railway. In fact, I love driving this locomotive anywhere. It's always just a joy to use. It's just fantastic. I can't say anything bad about it. I love it. So a massive thank you to the guys at the Leiston Works Railway for inviting us down and asking for Sir William and letting us have a play with it. It's been really, really great. I've loved every moment of it. So guys, thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, share this video with your friends and leave a comment. Have you enjoyed seeing the little Ruston? What do you think about my loco? Let us know. And if you've enjoyed this video, how about clicking up there for the big brother of this one, the 165? Or how about clicking down there for the same thing but on the narrow gauge, the 44/48? And I'll see you next time, guys. Thanks for watching. See you again.